This video was recorded on the Sapphire Pulse RX 570. Splitgate Arena Warfare is a free-to-play first-person shooter that attempts to combine the very best of Halo's multiplayer with Portal's... Portals? I managed to get quite a few games on both maximum and minimum settings at 1080p on the Sapphire Pulse RX 570. You can see which preset was used in each video clip by looking at the label underneath the performance overlay in the upper right. I will go over the performance in a little bit more detail later on in this video, but first, let's have a quick look at the game itself. In many ways, Splitgate Arena Warfare is a throwback to a much simpler time where deathmatch was king and where strategy would take a backseat to raw skill. Gameplay feels much like that of the earlier Halo games, from the way that you move around the arenas right down to how the weapons are balanced. One thing that I have heard fairly frequently in the wider press about this game is that it's an arena shooter, followed by comparisons to franchises like Quake and Unreal Tournament. While there is in fact an arena element, as you do indeed fight it out in arenas and there's even an arena in the title, I don't believe that the players of Quake and UT are this game's target audience. Personally, I see many more parallels with games like Half-Life 2 Deathmatch, Fear, and even the Call of Duty series than I do with the aforementioned games. To be clear, I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, I simply want to make sure that people come into this game with accurate expectations. Obviously, one area where the game hopes to distinguish itself from the competition is within the use of portals. These work almost identically to what we see in Portal 1 and 2. You have a portal bound to both your Q and E keys by default, and when both are placed onto a surface, a link is established allowing you to see, shoot, and move through them. That said, you can only actually see through your own portals, but you can at least still move through and shoot through the portals of both your enemies and teammates. I would assume that this is mainly down to a technical limitation, as we do see a fairly substantial hit on performance whenever our active portals are visible on screen, which is something we will talk a little bit more in depth about later on in this video. Again, just like the Portal games, portals can only be placed on certain surfaces. In this case, any surface with an animated blue mesh. These are strategically placed around the arenas, and learning their placements is essential to getting the most out of them. Unfortunately, however, due to the inability to see through enemy portals, it can be tempting to use them to shoot at players from a safe location without being seen. Also, while jumping through an enemy's portal can always feel exhilarating, the risk of doing so never really seems to balance out. Now, in all fairness, I think it's going to be a very long time before we see players master the usage of portals, but right now I have to admit that I'm kind of on the fence to whether or not if I even like them. Don't get me wrong, I think they are incredibly cool, it's just that when I abuse them, it makes me question how much I would enjoy the game if I was having the same kind of abuse done to myself. So I suppose this is the kind of thing where we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. To be honest, a lot of my concerns could likely be blamed on the arenas just as much as the portals. At launch, the game comes with 8 distinct multiplayer maps that are playable across each of the available game modes, and this is where I feel some of the problems stem from. When joining a game through the built-in matchmaking system, you have no choice of what map or mode you are going to be playing on, and put simply, I did not enjoy certain map mode combinations. Mainly due to some of the arenas being far too easy to abuse portals in, and others just really not flowing so well with certain game modes. The one aspect of the level design that really does take me back in time is the verticality, with most of the arenas being split across multiple levels. Thankfully, unlike many of the games that have got this amount of verticality, I rarely found myself getting trapped on the low ground, as you are never more than a few seconds away from getting back up high thanks to the portals. You also have access to a jetpack that can help prevent you from falling too far after a misstep. By holding down the jump key, the jetpack will engage for a few seconds, either giving you a little bit of extra height on a jump, or slowing your descent during a fall. While we are on the topic of movement, I will say that I did find it to feel a little too floaty. Most of the time, this was not really a massive issue, but when trying to get into a portal that you'd place on the floor, or maybe jump into a portal that was placed a little bit too high to walk into, it did end up feeling rather clumsy. I kinda just wish that the gravity was a little stronger, the sprint was a little faster, and the jetpack would be a little bit more powerful. Not only would this help the pace of the game in my honest opinion, but it would also make flying through the air a lot less deadly, as currently players with good aim will have zero issues skeeting you right out of the sky due to how predictable your movement actually is. Gunplay for the most part is pretty decent. You spawn into the arena with an assault rifle and a pistol. Both weapons are equally viable in my opinion, but they do rely on very different skills. The assault rifle is all about tracking the enemy while holding down the trigger, where the pistol on the other hand is more about those quick mini flicks. Throughout the arena, you will also find additional weapons that can be collected. These range from shotguns and SMGs through railguns and rocket launchers. Unfortunately, however, with the exception of the rocket launcher, the weapons are balanced so tightly that I felt no good reason to go out of my way and pick them up. I mean, even if I came across them organically, I would still ignore them most of the time, because even if they all do that one job better than the starting weapons, they are still nowhere near as versatile. In fact, I think you could likely remove all the weapon pickups and I swear that most players would not even notice. Now, since this is a free-to-play game, the developers are aiming to monetize via microtransactions and loot boxes. At the time of recording this video, the item shop is still not yet available, but you were at least able to buy some loot crates. You also get a few loot crates simply by playing the game, so I was at least able to open up a few for myself. Inside, you find stuff like character and weapon skins, and thankfully, there's not loads of filler like what you find in most games which utilize loot boxes. Honestly, the implementation here is one of the furthest I have seen, but unfortunately, I really just didn't find any of the skins to be all that interesting. This mostly comes down to a lack of overall personality, which leaves everything, well, looking a little bit generic. With a little bit of luck, the item shop will be able to tackle this somewhat when it's finally released by having some really cool skins, but right now I just don't know if any of this really interests me. Splitgate's personality only really manages to surface during a couple of its game modes. My personal favourite has got to be Teabag Confirmed, which is basically the good old kill confirm game mode, but instead of walking over an enemy's dog tag, you need to spam crouch on their bodies instead. Then there is Team Oddball, which is pretty much the same as a game mode called Rabbit from a game called Tribes. In this one, you need to hold the disco ball for as long as possible. Each second, a point is awarded to the team holding it, and it can be a lot of fun chasing down players. I actually really enjoyed this in Tribes, and I think I would enjoy it in this a lot as well, providing that the maps work with it. As you would likely expect, there is also a lot of classical game modes here as well, and this includes stuff like TDM, King of the Hill, Capture the Flag, and even Domination. Now, as good as the core gameplay loop is, it's not perfect, and that is mainly down to a few technical issues. The single biggest issue I have with the game has got to be the input latency. Now, I don't know if this is due to literal input delay or if it's down to the widely variable frame rate, but honestly, I found it to be nearly unplayable at times. Normally, when I record gameplay footage, I will turn on AMD's Enhanced Sync to minimize any screen tearing on the video. However, I simply could not bring myself to do it, as it also adds a small amount of input lag, and that, when added to the game's own input lag, was just, it was far too much for me to handle. As I mentioned, this could be at least partially down to how variable the frame rate can be. When you are looking through one of your portals, it can tank the frame rate by well over a third. So when you're spinning your view, for example doing a 180 check behind you, if you swipe past one of your own portals, it can feel like you are moving your mouse through treacle. You should actually be able to see these fluctuations I am talking about on the frame rate graph in the performance overlay. Now, talking about performance, generally the game was running fairly okay. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I played on maximum and minimum settings at 1080p on the Sapphire Pulse RX 570. At max settings, our FPS would hover between around 60 and 90, and on the lower settings we saw an average of around 130. Now, while these numbers are fairly decent, I don't really think that they translate into game feel in the way that you would normally expect. Thankfully, I was able to make the game feel somewhat better by capping the frame rate to around 120 and using FreeSync. Still not perfect, but a lot better than without the cap, purely due to the frame time consistency. In conclusion, Splitgate Arena Warfare has quite a few problems that prevent it from being great, but I have to admit, I still did have a fair amount of fun while playing it. There is something about the gunplay that manages to feel really satisfying, at least when the mouse feels on point, that is. One aspect of the game that divides people the most has got to be the portals. People seem to either love them or hate them. Currently, I myself am a little bit on the fence, because while there have been times where I've really enjoyed them and managed to use them, let's just say correctly, more often than not, I think that they tend to lean more towards encouraging camping than they do aggression. Now, would I recommend this game to all of you lot? Yeah, I would. I mean, first of all, it's free to play, so why not? Especially if you're someone that's maybe a little bit less sensitive to the input latency than I am. Again, I did have quite a bit of fun while playing, even if it was in a very brain dead kind of way. It's certainly got an old school charm about it. I'm pretty certain that I will keep it installed for the foreseeable future and jump on when I just want a quick dose of action. I think that's what this game is going to be great for. I don't imagine people playing it all day, every day trying to get better, but I'm sure a few people will do, but I think generally it's just good for a little bit of fun every now and again. Now, before I jump off, I would just like to say a massive thank you for stopping by and watching this video right till the very end. If you are new around here, I would appreciate it if you would consider slapping that subscribe button and dinging that bell so you get notified of our future uploads. Also, if you are active over on Instagram, then maybe you could consider following our account over there as well. It can be found at SapphireTech_official. Now, if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in any way, please do let us know by leaving us a like or alternatively a dislike. Either way, your feedback is welcomed. If you've got any suggestions, questions or anything like that, please do leave them in the comment section below. Once again, thank you so much for watching from myself and everyone here at the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel. And until next time, we will catch you later. Bye bye.